Truth, logic, action, power. It's the GreggHoush Show here on New Revolutionary Radio. From the Leonard School in Malden, Massachusetts, Gregg and company are here to bring a sense of ethics to your news. Whether it's politics, activism, or current events, we always seek to inform and never to deceive. Let's start the show.
All right, everyone. Welcome to episode 30 of the GreggHoush Show.
It's as old as me now.
I'm a little under the weather, so the others are gonna take the show from here. But
Us co-Greggs.
we've got the wonderful Kayla here,
That's me.
and of course Derek down there on the end,
We've got Hush
Hello,
Money,
hello.
D Money.
D Money, and of course we have Mac.
We've got the Mac
Mac-a-doodle-doo.
Daddy. He's the Mac attack. He's got your back. He's Mac.
So that was enough to make me need to leave the room. You might be able to tell I'm just under the weather. So
But there's
Anna's,
so much to talk about that we can't not have an episode.
I won't allow that. I'll at least show up for this part. So Anna's gonna take my seat here, and these guys are gonna get going.
We got the alt Greg coming in.
Do it.
Substitute Gregg.
We're all
Designated
gonna look
Gregg.
for reasons
Yes,
to take like
yeah.
bathroom passes now.
We could try. I can't believe it's not Gregg, but everybody can believe
We
I'm
can
not
believe
Gregg.
you're not Gregg.
I mean, you never know. I
mean,
mean,
to be fair, if you've tried the namesake product there, I think you can probably believe that's not either.
but
so.
also, like, some people are pretty dumb.
I suppose that is true. Also, you know,
We'll be talking about that tonight.
we're married, so we're legally the same person now, right?
I mean,
why not?
I think on paper, yes.
I think that's how that works.
I'm not sure. I refuse to get married because I hate men. But
Did you know?
Tough stance.
Did you know you live in Massachusetts?
I live in America, and
you
I
have
mean,
options.
that is true.
Yeah,
We have a
Massachusetts
few
protects your
different
right.
options. Just two, actually. I think for the taxes.
Well, I mean, if you're talking about different genders, then they can turn into a whole
Well, I mean,
thing.
like it's either you're.
Well, I thought she was going with the, either you get married or you don't.
Yeah,
that is also a
Right.
choice.
yeah. I mean,
But she's saying she hates men.
Yeah,
But
but
like,
Really,
Not
an
really.
overarching statement too, right? I mean,
as
can't
I
be
sit
all
with if I sit with a room full of men every week.
and survive somehow. We can't be that bad.
Okay, guys.
yeah, we can.
I have 6
Speaking-
pages of notes in front of me.
It's true.
I haven't read any of this.
Sweet.
So
Let's do
who
this.
wants to take point
All
on
right,
picking what
I'll-
we talk about first?
All right.
Also, speaking of
let's
terrible
start.
men.
No, let's start. Yeah, let's actually start with some terrible men, specifically Ted Cruz, because this story, I think this has to be the one we start with this week, because this is just
Can't get more terrible,
right.
Than
And,
this. Than
I
this
mean,
guy.
I honestly probably should have included some notes on all of the terrible things fellow members of the Senate have said about Ted Cruz, just to lead off with just
Well,
how.
we could start with the best one, which was Lindsey Graham, that said that if someone shot and killed Ted Cruz on the Senate floor and you had the trial on the Senate floor and the entire Congress witnessed it, you wouldn't have a single witness and you wouldn't get a conviction.
Okay,
That's
okay.
tough.
Before we dig too deep into how much we hate Ted Cruz in general, let's talk about what specifically is going on with Ted Cruz
Well,
right now.
in this case, we don't hate. Well, it's important to talk about the hating
Oh.
Ted Cruz part, like get that out of the way, since this story doesn't actually involve any hatred of Ted Cruz. It's just kind of an important background detail.
And we just underlying it with we hate him.
Also, we like to
Yeah.
remind everyone of all the
Highly
things that people have
relevant
said
right now.
about Ted
He's
Cruz.
just such a
For
terrible.
example, like the time that Al Franken said, I like Ted Cruz more than most of my other colleagues in the Senate, and I hate Ted Cruz.
And then, his former roommate in college was like, even if I sided with Ted Cruz politically, like 100%, I would,
Yeah, he said
I
that,
would
like,
only hate
Ted
him
Cruz-
1% less.
And he also said that, like, the thing that Ted Cruz excels at is getting people who agree on absolutely nothing to agree on the fact that they absolutely hate Ted Cruz.
And Anna, to your point, if we should continue with the topic first before hating Ted Cruz, like,
I think you're mistaken.
well,
Have you met Ted Cruz or seen
there's
a
a little bit
picture
left
of him?
Obviously
over.
not.
A little bit left
I
over.
am not allowed to meet Ted Cruz because I don't think I have the self-control.
I called one of my reps. I
Let's
forgot
just
which. I
explode.
think it might have been one of our senators. I can't remember if it was senator or my congressman. But I was shooting the shit with one of the people that calls on the not calls on the radio, answers the phone. And it was during the healthcare thing, and I said to we said something because I think Ted Cruz had done something, but I was like, oh my god, is his face just as terrible in real life as it is on like like I imagine it. And he was like, and the kid on the phone was just like, oh, it's worse. And then I was like, how does it not get punched in the face? And he was just like, I shouldn't answer that.
Remarkable self-restraint. Anyway, somebody may have had a failure in their self-restraint because during Jeff Sessions' testimony to the Senate Judiciary Committee, things got a little bit weird. And at one point, Ben Sass said, there was some drama there. Sorry, I have added to the drama and distracted you for a minute. I was paying enough attention there that I dumped a Dr. Pepper on Senator Cruz. So that was what was distracting us.
Well, to be fair, that was not an accident.
Then the story got weird. See, a little while later, Ted Cruz tweets out a photo of one of those fridges with like the glass door, and it's all full of Dr. Pepper cans, and it has the tweet's message is, memo to office. Please place a picture of Ben Sass above the Dr. Pepper fridge in our lobby. He is now cut off. And of course,
ooh, sick burn, Ted Cruz.
right? But
trying.
someone tweets at Ben Sass saying, accidentally at Ben Sass, and he tweets out in direct reply to that, no comment. So a little while later, someone else tweets at him, if I were sitting with the son of the guy who killed Kennedy, I might do worse than spill some Dr. Pepper. And then Sass replies to that guy, tweeting, full disclosure, I was wearing my Lee Harvey Oswald was framed t-shirt. So like 20 minutes later, I mean, almost like within half an hour, just over 20 minutes later, Ted Cruz tweets out a picture with no text except that he tweets it at Ben Sass. And the picture that he tweets out is one of the 3 uncracked ciphers sent to authorities by the Zodiac killer.
It's unreal.
Which
Of
of course,
is definitely confirming Ted Cruz is the Zodiac
right.
killer.
Not that anyone was in any real doubt, but
He's definitely now it's confirmed.
Right.
Zodiac killer. Is the statute of limitations up for that case? Can we
I
we
feel
have
like
a conviction on?
those kind of murders tend not to have limitations.
Sometimes they toll, but hey, LAPD, I think we found the man.
I genuinely don't understand how the internet latched on to Ted Cruz as the Zodiac killer, but I do find the memes that go by my dash periodically to be very entertaining.
Well, I mean, he made a reference to it too, is just like surprising to me. I don't feel like he has any like engagement with anybody. Like he's not a human. He's a bit of a
No,
people
he's-
specifically people that know him specifically comment on the fact that he's really bad with emotions and like dealing with other people.
Where the hell does
and
this come
making
from,
friends and like
He's clearly the
anything
Zodiac
involving
killer.
being a human.
He must be. Yeah, it's the only
Like
logical
apparently he
option.
tried making a Curb Your Enthusiasm joke during like some town hall with like
yeah,
Bernie
yeah.
Sanders, and it was just like a cringe worthy moment where everyone was like,
not well done. I mean, it was like one of those things where like if it had been someone that was actually good at comedy, you would have been like laughed, and then afterwards been like, okay, I don't really know why I laughed. It wasn't actually that funny.
Yeah.
I guess it was just the delivery.
Yeah.
But he didn't have the delivery.
Yeah, he doesn't have
Okay.
a delivery on anything, and he just collects canned soup.
The real issue I have is his face like has this negative space where a fist goes, and like every time you look at
Wasn't
it,
it
you go, "Why isn't there a fist?" They're not. I want to put mine there, but I'm just
He is
confused.
easy to hate.
No, but
easy to
didn't
hate.
Psychology Today put out an article
He
that
did.
was like Ted Cruz's face is scientifically awful?
Yeah, it's just no good. And now he's
He
joking
is.
about
He
being the
just looks sad.
Zodiac killer in a
and
way
he's
where
sad
it's
looking.
hard to let that
I
slide.
mean, left or right, we all can agree Ted Cruz sucks.
Yeah.
So
Left or right, we can all agree that one of those fists belongs in Ted Cruz's face.
or both. Oh man.
So anyway, the Republicans are having some other issues besides Ted Cruz and his punchable face and probably being the
I mean,
Zodiac
what
killer.
aren't they having issues on?
Yeah, but in this
Okay, there's
case-
plenty of issues, but there's a growing list of Republicans that are retiring.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna say bye to them. Like, I'm not gonna miss
No.
them. Like,
It is kind of interesting, though, especially I was looking at some of this information, and so far this year, 20 House Republicans have either or announced their intention to resign or not run for re-election. as opposed to only 10 Democrats who have done so.
Why wouldn't the lobbyists create that golden parachute for them, right? To retire early if they're out of touch with
Well,
their
it's kinda
target demo.
interesting.
They don't care
like-
if they're out of touch. That's not the
But
point.
it's
These aren't
also
usually-
interesting that they're choosing now to retire when they control everything.
Yeah.
Like
and
that's usually
yeah.
not the
Most of-
time people to retire.
a
It's
lot
like
of these-
I have all the power. Time to give it up, guys.
Yeah, and a lot of these, on top of that, are people that don't really stand much of a chance of losing a re-election campaign. Several of them are people that just would get reelected no matter what.
Yes, most
Yeah.
of them would run unopposed, even if they like did have
Okay, we should correct that a little bit because they could theoretically lose a primary.
Now, some of these people
Sure.
really stand out to me. A few of them are older. One of these guys, he's 86. Sam Johnson from Texas. I
He's
understand.
also the first one that made the announcement and did it way back in January before Trump was even inaugurated.
I understand. You don't want to be here anymore. You've done your time. That's fine. We've got some folks who are 70, but some of these guys, Jason Chaffetz is 50,
Yeah,
which is relatively
and
young for a senator.
suddenly resigned out of nowhere.
Well, he also resigned when he was the head of the House Judiciary
Yeah,
Committee,
I mean,
that was the committee that's in charge of investigating and subpoena power. So it's like,
there was a whole bunch of connections with him defending Trump, having conflicts of interest and stuff. So we had some reasoning why he
and
specifically
like they also
resigned.
rumored that he wanted to run for governor.
Yeah.
So like it made,
Good luck.
which apparently he didn't, but now he's just sitting
Well,
on
he
that
might
sweet
later.
Fox seat.
He probably wanted he might well have just wanted to get out of office so he wasn't tarred with the brush of the failed Congress when he does
Or
run for
like
governor.
be forced to write a subpoena for
Yeah.
Trump and all of his kids and every Republican.
Now the ones that I thought were especially interesting were Dave Reichert of Washington, who is going to Heritage, 9th least conservative House Republican as a
So when they say ninth least, does that mean he's just a moderate?
yeah. I
Like,
mean
he's got like
no.
actual thoughts, or
No, I mean it just means that he doesn't agree with the Heritage Foundation.
oh, so like
No,
Heritage
just so we can understand, is the first least conservative actually the least conservative, or are they doing it reversed?
Well, I mean they're doing it in according to what the Heritage conservative, which doesn't really coincide with any definition of the word conservative I'm familiar with, but it does match up well with political conservatism in the
And
United
I
States.
know like the Koch, the Freedom Caucus, like their idea of like conservative is just like blowing up the country.
Yeah.
So it's like when they say like they're the least conservatives, it's like, are you meaning that they have actual rational thoughts in their head? Like,
well, I
and
wouldn't
that's-
go that far.
I mean, like, 'cause
I mean, maybe number one. The
Yeah.
least, the
Yeah,
absolute
like, I
least
mean, 'cause
The
there's
conservative.
least
what-
least probably does not agree with drilling directly into polar bears.
Right.
yeah, because there was a time where like you could like there was a lot like Republicans or people who in the Republican Party were pro-union and like
Yeah.
pro-environmental regulations, and so like there was a time where like things could have
Yeah, but that was decades ago, and
Yeah,
those aren't the
we're-
people in
we're
office.
talking
these
like
days.
Nixonian era, like
Right.
back when the last real Republican was in office,
Yeah,
and not at all controversial.
but yeah. So Dave Reichert is considered not very conservative for the House, according to the Heritage Foundation. Conservative Review gave him an F. According to GovTrack, he was the 234th most ideological House Republican in 2016, which means that he was one of the few Republicans that actually crossed party lines on absolutely anything ever. He also comes from a district where the partisan voting index says that there's no party bias. So it is a very vulnerable district. It is one of those districts where a Republican could easily lose to a Democrat.
Yeah, there's
Similar-
like 9 congressional races for 2018 where they're represented by Republicans, but Hillary overwhelmingly won the general election.
Reichert is one of those.
So yeah,
But several of the other people retiring are also in similar situations to Reichert, even if they aren't one of those 9. Charlie Dent from Pennsylvania 15 is also one of the ones that's ranked as not very conservative according to Heritage. He gets an F from the Conservative Review. He's the 224th most ideological House Republican according to GovTrack. That is in a district in Pennsylvania where the partisan voting index is only a +4 bias in favor of Republicans. It's not, that's what would be considered a Republican leaning or maybe even swing district.
like a
So-
purple area.
Right. And also Dave Trott in Michigan 11. Another example like that. Pat Tiberi in Ohio is also is a kind of similar situation. So we have like 5. And Eliana Ross Leitonen from Florida's 27th district. All of these people are very much what passes for moderates in the GOP these days, and all of them suddenly decided they wanted to retire, not seeking another office. Many of the Republicans are leaving the House, are seeking another office, either governor or Senate. But in a bunch of these cases, these people are all legitimately just retiring from public service, and
which means is like, what's the catch? Like, are they?
They're probably going to the private sector, and
are they getting paid lots of money to move to the private
I'm
sector?
sure there is a revolving door. We all know.
I mean, lobbyists are constantly former like elected
even if
officials.
they don't become lobbyists directly, they become a VP of a company and they use their connections.
Or they go to a think tank.
Right.
Or, it's like there's definitely.
I don't think we have to worry about any of where these people are going to be getting their money next year.
They are not starving.
That's not a problem. I do think it's interesting that a lot of the states that we see here are, what we think of as swing states. We've got Ohio and Pennsylvania and Florida.
Michigan.
Yeah. So,
well, now my concern is
just,
who's running, or who have the Democratic Party are we going to be running in these districts? Because like right now we're like we somehow have all the platforms of a normal person, and party beliefs, but we don't have like leaders.
And the Democratic Party is just really awful at managing nationwide set of campaigns. They can't prioritize.
We can't figure out slogans. Like our slogan.
The slogans are awful. They are so bad.
It's like instead of saying like we believe in like people, they're like we believe in all. Like they have to use all of the technical terms.
Yeah.
Like they don't use DACA. They use the full name. Like
it's like they didn't use any focus group testing or like use a marketing person to try and come up with something catchy.
No, their focus groups are all full of their best friends. Like it's
that is
still
totally true.
like I mean it's ridiculous.
I'm not looking to the Democratic Party establishment to come up with the candidates for these districts because
I'm not so either. But I mean we still who's out there.
No, what you do need to be looking at are the Our Revolution groups in these states. Because I'm pretty sure at this point Our Revolution has groups in every state, and there is the national organization too.
Yeah. But I mean, we also don't want to like flood a primary too, because that's sometimes that can be counterproductive. And when you have when you have 15 Democratic
if you've
candidates.
got 15 Democratic candidates, it's a problem. But first off, that's why we have primaries.
But even still,
and even beyond that, if you've got organizations like Our Revolution that are trying to talk in the very local and at the state level to the people on the ground about what they want to see and who they want to see heading off to Washington, then you're going to end up with fairly strong candidates going forward. And not all of them are going to make it, but the Bernie-crats, if you want to call them that, they are starting to flip districts. You're getting, these...
we're doing really well on the local level. I mean, slowly, but...
it takes time and effort.
But
it's a slow process.
But this is exactly what Our Revolution, is built to work on. This is the exact problem that they want to deal with. And here's a whole bunch of opportunity just handed to us because I'm going to presume all of these Republicans do not want to be associated with what keeps happening.
And also, we also know there's just a worse Republican behind them, like with the Roy Moores of the world.
Mm-hmm.
We don't need more of that.
We really don't. And
now there's also another interesting factor here, and we're talking about the House, but we also have a Republican senator who's announced his retirement for election in 2018 of Tennessee. And the reason that him making that decision seems to be pretty clearly related to Trump. And I think it's a very interesting, Bob Corker in particular made that decision.
Is he the only one or was there another senator?
I think he's the only Republican that's announced so far.
Okay,
but he's interesting because he's had a very complicated history with Trump. I mean, back in April of last year, he said that he supported Trump and that he liked that Trump was challenging the foreign policy establishment that's been here so long, but that he wouldn't endorse Trump.
Yeah, they
Then-
all said that at first.
Right. But then in May, he was said to be on the short list for VP. Obviously, that didn't happen. And then
Wasn't there something about like Trump didn't want him because he was too short?
I think he was
That
the
was in
one.
like I think that was
that
in,
was Bob
Yeah,
Corker.
like that was in Political that came out that like he didn't like how short he was.
And then he was also in consideration for Secretary of State. And one of the people that in May 2017 was the Republican that came in and said that the White House was in a downward spiral. A few months later, back in August, he said that Trump has not yet been able to demonstrate the stability nor some of the competence he needs to demonstrate in order to be successful.
So generous.
But then in September, he said that he had a very, very strong relationship with Trump, only to about 2 weeks later announce his intention to retire.
It's almost like they're lying.
And then 2 weeks after that, said that
Kayla, did you just accuse a sitting politician of lying?
I mean, it kind of sounds
How
like
could
lying.
you? How could you?
I mean, I'm just shooting in a barrel here. I'm shooting in the dark. But
I'm
like,
shocked.
it sounds like lying.
But it's very interesting that Bob Corker has been going to such lengths to try and like not distance himself from Trump, and yet even he's very clearly hit the point where he's just like, no, fuck this shit. I mean, his most recent statement on October 8th said that Trump could set the nation on the path to World War III, and that, quote, he concerns me. He would have to concern anyone who cares about our nation, end quote.
Oh yeah, like
So,
it's at the point where
like-
like when you got the people like Republicans like getting to this point of being like Trump is a crazy person who is going to annihilate us. Like I think that's saying something.
They've been saying that for a while. Not all of them, and not as loud as they need to.
And they hadn't been the ones that are currently in office hadn't been very willing to attach their names to things for the most part.
Yeah, but
I
when you're
think-
leaving office and you don't have to worry about a re-election, like no fucks to give anymore.
Yeah, but it's just funny how he kind of went back and forth, and I have a strong relationship with Trump. And then like 2 weeks later, it's like, you know what? I'm done. I'm out. I'm going home. Fuck all of this shit. Fuck that guy.
You
He's
guys,
a prick.
I'm going home.
Like,
Oh yeah.
I am done.
You know,
Well,
you think his memoir is going to be put a cork in it?
Oh.
I'm out.
Oh, mic
no,
drop.
because no one's
Mic
giving him a
drop.
book deal.
Oh, that had better not be what he says to his wife.
It's
Anyway,
gonna be our. It's gonna be our.
He buys her T-shirts and shit.
no,
It's gonna be our episode title, guys.
Put a cork in it. Yeah.
no, I do kind of see some sense in why he'd be like, I'm a strong supporter. My relationship is very, very strong because Trump is so big on
Oh
this
yeah, absolutely.
idea of loyalty, where if you're gonna hang out there, you have to at least.
And Trump
play
is
the-
just well known for
I
being
mean,
petty
there's
and
only one
vindictive.
thing
The
to
game.
do right now with Bob Corker. Welcome to the resistance, Bob Corker. How
Bob,
does,
you're still a piece of shit, but at
Like,
least you're
what-
on our side for
you're
once.
part of the resistance now.
Somebody mail him a black bandana and some safety pins. Let's do this.
Get him an I'm with her shirt too.
Some sort of anti-fob badging.
I love how the Antifa flag has two flags on it. It's like, guys, what are you doing? What are you
we
doing?
couldn't decide, so we went with both.
Look, they just wanted everyone to understand how much of a movement they aren't. They are not nearly organized to do enough to do anything, so their flag just has another goddamn flag on it.
I know it's like, and they took it from like clip art of like Microsoft too. They're like, that's all we got.
Yeah. So speaking of Trump being petty and vindictive
Yes.
When is he not?
all the time.
He is never not.
Oh, I don't know. I've got the same cold Gregg does. I'm just not a bitch, so I'm here
Fair enough.
talking. Well, not that kind of bitch. Anyway, the NFL, everybody knows Trump has been.
He's at war with the NFL, so
We
he
may
can-
have mentioned this
Constantly.
once on the
Well,
show.
This is just so we
briefly.
can conveniently ignore Puerto Rico.
Yes.
It's not just so we can conveniently
It's
ignore
pretty much-
Puerto Rico.
it's-
Like he's
It's mostly
so
for him.
sensitive. He can't.
But that, and it's
his
like
delicate
he
fifis.
doesn't also want to care about Puerto Rico
Oh yeah, he doesn't.
at all.
But anyway, it looked like there might be some movement in the NFL this week, which was very exciting, and then nothing happened, which wasn't very exciting. More or less,
Well, there actually was some movement in the NFL. Colin Kaepernick did file a lawsuit with the NFL, which actually is a very brilliant lawsuit. He filed a grievance and a lawsuit, which was a perfect move. And also what the lawsuit does is if he's successful, it will bring them back to the collective bargaining table because they were locked in for another, I think, 7 or 8 years. Tony, if you can correct me on that. And if he's successful, this would bring him back to the table in 2018, and that would put him in the position to renegotiate stronger union guaranteed union benefits, like deals, like contract deals, pays, like health benefits. Like it would actually be like it would benefit the players and the whole union, like in the NFL and the players union as a whole, for Kaepernick to win this lawsuit.
Yeah, and his case is not the most solid because he does have to prove that they all colluded to keep him out of the league instead of each individually not wanting to deal with the politics.
Well, it might not. I would have to look into the legality of it, but it might actually be stronger than we're giving it. I'm hoping it is just for everyone's sake, because this actually isn't just going to establish him, but this will do so much for the players. But I mean, it's like his statistics, like there's no way. So yeah, the union, their original collective bargaining union that they recently signed would extend through the 2020 season. So this would bring them back to the table next season. But yeah, so his argument, like his statistics, there's no reason why he shouldn't be signed to a team compared to like the other quarterbacks playing. So what other reason besides politics are keeping him from a team? So
I think like the coaches and the managers, the owners have all gotten the idea that there's a game in the NFL for sure, and
that's his argument. Is they're saying that they're doing their best to keep him from getting signed. So
unspoken game.
Yeah.
To keep Goodell happy, like to play the game.
We had quarterbacks they took out of retirement to sign, just to have a starting quarterbacks. We have starting quarterbacks that we had 3.
We do also have the issue where Aaron Rodgers, who has actually, tweeted in support of the take a knee movement, although I don't think he has personally taken a knee during an anthem.
No, he's the golden child of the NFL. I don't think he'd do that.
He did post a picture of himself kneeling with some players, but it wasn't during the anthem.
Yeah.
Practice.
Which is a little...
that's for optics as close as he can get there.
He's out on injury.
Yeah,
he's out for the season.
It's also kind of get like leverage. And I think this is your point, Anna, like leverage for attention or credit for something, but he's not really participating in it for real. Like, I don't. That's my read on.
He's sticking his neck out as far as he thinks he can, which
but
is
it's
all
not very
anybody
fucking
ever
far.
does.
I mean,
but at the same time, he's out for the season, and Kaepernick is a Wisconsin native, so it's like what of a better team to put him on?
Yeah.
And he's got his interception rate is one of the lowest rates of all quarterbacks. So it's like statistically, there's no reason why he should be on a team, and the only reason why he's not is they must have colluded against him. So I think he does have a stronger argument than the public is going to present it. Obviously, he's going to get it. Hopefully he gets his day in court and we'll see what happens.
You got to wonder what Goodell did to get that kind of leverage with everybody. Because
Goodell has way too much power.
Not even saying or doing anything. And he's got, mobs of billionaires doing what he wants.
And that's one of the things that if they go back to the table and they are able to renegotiate their union contracts and their benefits, they can actually eliminate some of Goodell's power through their contracting agreements and their bargaining. So this would just be so much better for the whole organization.
Just made so much money for the owners, so many billions, extending seasons, longer preseason, all that stuff.
And as far as the actual meeting they had talking about, potentially changing the rules to force players to stand during the anthem, apparently that never even came up during the meeting, and they were trying to focus.
So yeah, Trump actually tweeted out saying that Goodell made some new rule. He listened to him, and not true.
Trump saying something that's not true on Twitter.
This
is
I know it's
this
like
is breaking news.
First, we're starting with like politicians are liars, and now it's going to Trump's also a liar. What?
No. But anyway, it's really good to see that the NFL is at least giving some lip service to the idea of maybe we should be supporting some of these reforms that our, largely black players want to see happen. And maybe it is kind of bullshit that, black people are systemically oppressed in our society. That might be a problem. Maybe we can throw some amount of money at the problem. Anyway.
At first when I didn't actually read his statement because I don't really care about Goodell and I think he's an evil son of a bitch. But at first when I read it, it kind of felt to me that they were but no, so when I first read the Goodell or the headlines around the Goodell statement, I thought it did sound like he was enforcing a new rule, and I was like, son of a fucking bitch. But then I was starting to think, and I was like, well, back to the Aaron Rodgers and the Packers. Well, Packers is a publicly owned team, so that would be the one team that they could not enforce that on, because you can't enforce that in a public municipality.
Unicorn of a situation, huh?
It would be, and if Kaepernick gets signed to that team, it's a loophole.
Loopholes.
The NBA actually did start up their season this past week, which not so great if you're from Boston. I don't know if you guys watched, but
I did not see the video
my
of it. I was
God.
afraid to.
Yeah, I walked into the room a little bit late, and Gregg was like, "Oh no, Gordon Hayward had this horrible injury. His leg was like broken in three
It's
different
like
places."
it was like a
Bad.
90-degree angle. I heard.
Like I went into it thinking like, "Oh my God, he broke his femur. He's like never gonna walk again." And then it's like, "Oh, he just broke his ankle like all the way
and
off."
his tibia.
Did he break his tibia too?
He broke
Okay.
his
No,
tibia.
just about that break
He had,
either. That thing is fierce.
No, he
Yeah,
could.
compared to like I'm
Stomach
expecting a
turning.
compound, femur fracture. That's
Yeah,
nothing.
okay.
But I mean, like, we did spend
Oof.
millions of dollars to
Towards the
make the
stomach,
new
though.
team around Hayward. So
I know.
great start.
I feel so bad because like this is one of the first times where Boston has made a really horrible trade, and
Yeah.
then the player's the one who had to pay for our hubris instead of just the city in general. Like it's not Hayward's fault.
No, it's not. I
didn't-
mean, this could be a potentially a career-ending injury.
Could be, yeah.
Hopefully not. Knock on wood.
Ugh.
But I mean,
don't
I
know.
will be shocked if he
I
ever
was
plays
shocked too.
again.
Yeah, even today's science,
yeah, no. But I
But
mean,
anyway,
anytime-
I did bring this up for a reason. It wasn't just so we could like be all
Oh, we can
grossed
talk-
out by his leg. I
no,
know we
can
could
talk
be
We all
sports
gross
all
out,
we want.
yeah.
I love sports.
But the thing is, like, you didn't see a lot of the players in the NBA doing any sort of anthem protest. You saw some people doing the locked arms, but you didn't see the kneeling or any of the other stuff. And people like Stephen Curry came out to say specifically, we chose not to do that because the NBA has given us so many opportunities to be out there with our causes.
Well, and also, it's in NBA contracts that they do have to be present.
Yeah, it's in the NBA contracts that they have to be present, and they could choose to take the fine if they wanted to.
Yeah.
They're not, and the reason that they're saying that they're not, whether or not it's actually true, is because they've got the ability to wear the "I Can't Breathe" shirts. They have
Yeah.
a lot of
They have other
structured
liberties.
charity
in
work.
the last 10 years too, you've got the NFL that's done nothing but try to take down the life of the athlete and try to make more money by squeezing juice and money out of these players' lives, not looking at the TBI, the traumatic brain injury stuff. And you have the NBA that, well, they haven't really done that to them. They've added some games to the season, I think, but that's about it. Otherwise, yeah, they've been good getting to their causes. Of course, they're not as angry and needing to scream and speak out and make a statement in uniform.
It's not so much the sport that they're angry about.
I think it's a part of it because if you look at the racial inequality in the NFL, it's like 80-20, and they're not giving them a voice there. I think that is a part of it. The fact they're disrespecting people that are making them billions and then not taking care of them
maybe
after.
that's a subconscious, but I know Kaepernick did start his movement specifically, like with the whole the police brutality videos.
Sure,
with
but
the
it's
Eric
easy to get
Gardner.
pissed off people to stand up
It's
or kneel like
Yeah,
that than people
but,
that are being taken care of.
I just don't want to conflate his movement with other things too.
That's
Like
it,
if
yeah.
people want to add to their movement, that's totally their prerogative. But I just know that like, Kaepernick has been very like clear from the get, like this is why I'm kneeling, and he's been very vocal on all of his social media.
Sure, for sure.
So,
that is the cause. That is
yeah,
the cause.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
it is the cause, and I think the thing that you see that's really different is Kaepernick was basically shut out of the NFL for what he did, and
It's the
you
same
have.
thing that happened in the 90s in the NBA with the.
But you have star players in the NBA wearing "I Can't Breathe" T-shirts on the court.
Yeah.
So that's a huge difference.
Yeah, that is true. And also, like, for the Golden State Warriors, they also made out a statement saying, against when Trump's rescinded his offer to Curry, even though Curry said, "I'm not showing up," and then the whole state was like. A whole team was like, yeah, we're not going to go. If one of us is not invited, then clearly none of us are.
And I think another part of this is that the NFL, compared to the NBA, the NFL suckled on the teat of patriotism of America, and really took tons of money from the government, from the Pentagon, from the NSA, not the NSA, from the Pentagon, though.
We can take money
That's
from the
insane.
NSA. I'm
Maybe
okay
from
with
the
But from the
that.
Pentagon, that is
really
where the
know
money
what they're
came from for all those patriotic shows and the dramatics and the sensationalizing. it's kind of, maybe in my mind anyway, the way I see it, kind of a karmic way of, paying them back for, you don't belong to that. You don't need to associate with that. You don't need to support that blindly, because then you're not allowed to say bad things about that. And that's kind of what they're doing now. And that's what all the, real flair and anger is about. Not the NSA, though. Not the NSA.
There's other anger in the NSA.
There's plenty more for them.
No, the anger
I got excited.
is at the current situation with how black people are treated by the police, how the justice system in this country works.
No, that's the cause. That's the cause. Not to confuse things. That's the cause, but repercussions and consequence on the NFL right now can be looked at as being partially because of that, because they associated with the brand of America so aggressively. And they really did it pretty aggressively. I mean, none of the shows really felt that authentic,
Yeah, and I think, we do have to deal with the fact that the brand of America right now is associated with some gross stuff.
Yeah. Yep. It's uncomfortable.
Kayla has an issue that she really wants to talk about today, specifically having to do with solitary confinement.
Well, actually, no, it's more so Massachusetts right now is having a huge criminal reform bill that's going through the legislature right now, and it's very interesting what they're trying to change. For one of them is solitary confinement. Right now, legally, a prisoner or an incarcerated person can be held in solitary confinement for up to 10 years.
Horrible.
Which
Horrible.
is absurd, because the UN has already come out with a resolution that the United States did not sign. It did not agree to. That solitary confinement for more than 3 days is torture.
Absolutely.
Basically, every expert
Absolutely
on
it is.
torture or solitary confinement agrees that prolonged solitary confinement is
And
unquestionably
even
torture.
3 days is debatably torture.
Yeah, and we routinely do longer than that just to isolate prisoners in case to quarantine them in case they have an infectious disease.
Oh, and transgender persons
Oh, yeah.
like more often in solitary confinement because they just don't.
It's for their own,
Because
safety.
instead of looking at them like people, like human
Them
beings,
in general population.
they just go, oh, we'll throw them in a box, and then we don't have to look
Right, then
at
we don't have
them.
to think about
That
it.
feeling is pretty much like dying inside. Like I was in solitary for just 24 hours, and I knew I was coming out of solitary when I went in. The psychological difference between the two of those is the world already. So I survived easily just because of knowing I was leaving, and I still got anxiety and felt as if the world had forgotten me by hour 18. And I didn't sleep, of course, that whole time. So that last 8 hours, it drags on. It really does. It wears
Other
yeah.
your
people
mind
I've
deep.
talked to that have been in or up to have all consistently reported, very, very severe
Very
problems as a
very dark
result,
stuff, yeah.
often lasting for a while.
This is one of the times where, it's unfortunate that you guys have alt Gregg instead of the real one here, because he actually,
Yep.
during his prison stay was in solitary confinement for, I think, close to a month. And, thank goodness for brain damage, because that's one of the few
I don't know
reasons.
if that's a great way of saying
It's
that.
possibly not
No.
the best phrasing. but
No, it's true though, because the way he is, it hurt him less than it would hurt another person.
And
Yeah.
other people I know that have been in for a similar
Oh,
length
yeah,
of
no,
time
I have a
reported
friend-
way worse.
I had a friend that was in solitary for on and off for 2 years, and for a crime he didn't commit, which was excellent. And he said the first day in general population, when they transferred him out of maximum when he was getting released, the transition, he had a panic attack, and he craves closed corners because now he's got PTSD. And just listening to his story was heartbreaking, because it's you were, and he was 19 years old.
Yeah, other people I've talked to, just some of them are just unable to function socially. They can't interact with other people in a normal fashion,
Yeah.
even years after the fact.
Yeah.
It
But-
sticks with you.
So on top
So
of
actually, I just want to, for some of the listeners
Okay.
who don't have, really good secondhand or, any firsthand experience with what solitary confinement is like, a lot of times we'll picture oh, it's a small cell that you're in, and it's kind of like being in a jail cell, but you're by yourself, so you don't have to worry about your bunkmate. Yay. It's not like that.
Not even a little.
Yes, you are in a small box. It is, a 12-foot by 7-foot cell. For the most part, the folks who are in there, conveniently, there's no bedding for you right now. I'm sorry.
The jail's short. Yep.
You end up with the worst food and jail food isn't good to begin with.
Oh yeah, there's horrible stories about like maggots
I
in
missed
the food.
2 of my meals that 24-hour period. That's true shit too. They missed them. That just fed me last. Everybody. I guess.
And they genuinely intentionally screw with the lighting schedule and the food schedule, so people who are in solitary cannot keep their 24-hour.
They're dependent.
Once
like,
you get disoriented to time too, it's really a scary thing.
Yeah, a lot. Usually, solitary cells aren't going to be the ones that have windows. You're not going to be able to see daylight entire period.
And that's why, that's a piece of why this is so damaging. It's very bad for humans to be away from other humans for too long. We are social animals, whether or not you want that to be the case. That's how it is. And we don't do well on our own, and we especially don't do well separated from the natural world that badly.
Also, just the lack of sensory input. When your brain doesn't have sensory input, then your brain makes up sensory input. If you've ever been in like a sensory deprivation chamber, people hallucinate in those immediately.
And so it also, I know Mac, you did some research beforehand when I was like telling you guys, I sent the link in the paper in Boston Globe today about the solitary confinement, and it says here that the average. So Matt, and by the way, a lot of people like to think of Massachusetts as a very progressive state. In a lot of ways, it is, but we still have a long way to go. And right now, the average length of stay in solitary confinement in Massachusetts is 28 months. That's over 2 years.
That is enough to
That
do
has to be
serious,
permanent damage.
lasting damage.
That's well over 3 days.
Yeah, that is
which the
significantly
UN
more.
resolution has already confirmed is torture. And of course, there's going to be pushback on this from the private prison industries. And of course, we've got one of the worst sheriffs in the United States, third or fourth to Joe Arpaio, in the Bristol County, where one of our worst jails is in. And this is the same. I forget the sheriff's name, but he's a piece of shit. And he's also old as fuck too. Like, he is Massachusetts Joe Arpaio. He has been in office, an elected official.
I wish we had his name so you could like shit talk him more directly.
Maybe we
Tony, if you could
cover
look
him
up
in a future show in more detail. Even.
Yeah,
Could be
right.
fun.
Yeah. He
Do a
has
segment on
been
him.
in office for like decades. He has offered to give up his inmates,
I remember hearing about that.
to Trump to build the wall.
That
Yeah,
guy.
it's
that
guy.
And he keeps
Ugh.
referring to him as his inmates. So I think he's being sued by the ACLU, I think, because of that. And one of our worst prisons, Walpole, is in his county, and if you have heard any stories out of Walpole, it is not good. Just from an example, you have one of the alive Boston bomber was held there in solitary confinement. Aaron Hernandez was held there in that's where the high profile, the highest, the most violent criminals are being held, and there is a lot of violence inside by the guards against the prisoners. Like, they are not looked at as people at all. And it's just really sad that we have to legislate to keep people out of being tortured.
This is like a real problem that we have to deal with, even in states like Massachusetts. This is like as good as it gets in America, and we still have this shit.
Yeah, and so just a little, I forget, I don't know what the exact name of this reform bill is that's making its way through the chambers right now, but there's also more to this bill, and it's actually very interesting. So one of the other things that they're trying to do with this is they want to raise the age of juvenile defenders to the age of 19, and they want to, and I've heard from a couple of other people that they also would incrementally increase that to inevitably be 21. So that means if it would be first moved to 19, that means if you're convicted of a crime at 19, you would be looked at as a youthful offender. Part of the juvenile system is that to be in juvenile court, you also have to be a pre-existing offender to be charged in juvenile court. It's just one of those technicalities. So a lot of people that are like, oh, if they're committing heinous crimes. Well, first of all, certain crimes can never be tried in juvenile court.
Yeah, and you can apply for a waiver even in.
Yeah, so something like murder is never going to be tried in juvenile court, so you can take that off your argument list. But it's just this is petty crimes. There were because most youthful offenders are petty crimes, and a lot of times it adds up to become bigger. So they want to raise the age to 19, which is good because people who are 19 should not be looked at the same way a 45-year-old or a 35 or 55-year-old. It's just not a thing. And the other thing they want to do, they want to add Romeo and Juliet laws, which is what happened. Like they want to
Just for dealing with statutory rape cases where the
and child pornography cases, which is what me and Mac were talking beforehand. It doesn't necessarily solve all the problems, but it's a start. Right now, they're saying that the age. They're saying that if like two youths, like 15 and 14, are in a relationship, it will protect them from, in case there's photos of themselves on their own phone, or if someone sends the significant other sends them a photo of themselves, like they won't be looked at by a state prosecutor as that's child pornography if they're both 15 and 14 or 14 and 14. It also will protect statutory rapes in case of, it would be, so the age bracket would be 15 to 19. They would look at that.
If you're within, I think, I don't know about the details on this specific proposal, but usually it's about 5-year gap that's allowed under.
Yeah, they didn't say
3 to
that.
5.
They didn't say an exact year. Like that was just the age bracket, the examples they cited. And we were talking about beforehand where the original or the knee-jerk reaction is like, oh, a 19-year-old shouldn't be sleeping with a 15-year-old. Sure, 15-year-olds shouldn't be having sex. But Massachusetts also has child bride laws still that makes it legal for child brides. So if you're going to want to start getting all up in arms about child having sex, why don't you start there?
So I mean, I'm not going to advocate that 15-year-olds should be having sex. I'm not going to say they necessarily shouldn't, because I think that's kind of, at least to some extent, a decision that's up to them. But they are having sex.
And a lot
they're
of them
choosing to have sex.
And 15-year-olds know what sex is. Yeah. There's the internet.
Right.
And if we leave them to learn about sex by porn, which is how a lot of people are learning about sex, it's only going to make it worse.
Yeah. And I mean, really, the key point to my mind is that, whether or not it doesn't solve the problem to say 15-year-olds shouldn't be having sex. You can say that all you want, and it doesn't change anything. The 15-year-olds are having sex. They've been having sex, and they're going to continue having sex.
Now, I will say this in the defense of the current crop of 15-year-olds. Teenagers today are having less sex than teenagers from previous generations.
That's good. That's great news.
And it largely correlates to the places where you don't have bullshit abstinence-only sex ed.
Yeah. No, absolutely,
and
100%.
By all means, I support them having the information and making that decision in a responsible fashion. And if they choose to have sex, I encourage them to do it with someone in their own age range and to use protection.
Also, I feel totally justified in stalking a 19-year-old dude who wants to have sex with a 15-year-old. There's just outside of the law, whatever is going on in your head, you think this is okay. You're a ski
at this, I'm not advocating it, but it's not an unusual thing for someone who's because I think up to 19 is could still be a senior in high school, and 15-year-olds could be freshmen, and it's not that uncommon that a freshman is dating a senior.
Or even if they're not even in high school anymore, they might have recently been and had been a senior who was 18 who was dating a freshman, and then they had a birthday, and even though the gap is only 3 years and 1 day, that person that was 1 day before their birthday, well, now it's a 15-year-old and a 19-year-old.
Yeah, and it's not even saying that they're having sex, but I mean it would still protect them for being in that relationship where you can't, because I mean there have been cases where parents have threatened, filed charges, so it's it's not necessarily people are looking at them going, oh my God, but it's someone saying they're endangering my child because they're an adult in the eyes of the system and my daughter's 15 or vice versa. So I think that's a very good idea. And also another thing that I really am happy to read about, and I hope this reform bill passes through, is that it wants to extend Fifth Amendment privilege to children. Meaning, so right now, Massachusetts, if a child is convicted of a crime or accused of a crime, not convicted, charged, even if the parents are witness, or and the state wants the parents to be the witness, the state can now coerce the parents to testify against their own child by saying that they don't, they'll charge them through DCF and they'll take their kids away. So this would extend Fifth Amendment privilege to the child so that the child can invoke privilege, bar the parents from testifying, even if the parents want, because that's how privilege works. Same with spousal privilege. if the husband's charged, the wife's charged, and the spouse wants to testify, the spouse still has a privilege to bar that person from testifying, and they want to extend that to children. Because there's no reason why a parent should be forced or a family member should be forced to testify against their own child just out of fear that they're going to get charged with another crime.
Any different from, well, any other violation of the Fifth Amendment.
Yeah.
If you're compelling people to testify against other people, well, you're compelling them to testify against other people and not allowing them to assert their own rights not to. Like,
yeah. And it's like they're parents. Like, I mean, granted, kids shouldn't be committing crimes, but I mean, like, you shouldn't be forcing, like, I would like to believe that most kids aren't really violent, and sure, they might be doing petty things like shoplifting, or maybe they get like hung up with drugs a little bit because drugs are everywhere. So it's not unheard of for like maybe a kid to get like charged with trafficking because it's an easy charge to bring. But parents shouldn't be forced to testify. And I think as a defendant, we have rights. We give rights to adults, so why not we give our rights to kids?
I mean, there's also the important consideration. People get charged with crimes that they aren't guilty of, and if you're calling a parent to testify, well, now the prosecutor gets to put the parent on the stand, get them to ask the questions the prosecutor wants, to get the answers from the parents that they want,
and a jury is going to see that, or a judge is going to hear, well, a parent just testified against their kid. Well, that's pretty damning.
Right. And like, you're only going to hear when you go on the stand, you go up for examination by the first attorney, and you don't get to present just your side of things. They ask you questions and you have to answer those questions. Sure, there's another attorney that then comes and tries to counter
do a rebuttal,
cross-examine, but
they usually have no power.
And also, you can use that to craft a narrative, and even if someone comes in later and tries to like change the narrative, just the set of testimony you've presented can make it feel like it holds together, even if the individual evidence is actually very weak.
Yeah. No, and credibility of witnesses can make or break a conviction.
Often does.
Yeah. And so this is a very interesting bill that's going through the Massachusetts legislature. And here's the thing about Massachusetts. We are an 80% Democratic legislation. So there's really no excuse for why bills don't pass in Massachusetts. Except, funnily enough, there's a lot of excuses to why bills don't pass here.
Tons of them, strangely.
And there's a lot of bills that were like, why don't we have that already? It seems like something we should have. And then somehow they end up not getting brought to the floor, or they get stalled, or they get sent back to committees until they die. I know my state senator, Barrett, Mike Barrett, is a co-sponsor of this bill. He was one of the first people to speak out about raising the juvenile age. I think there's a lot of good things in this bill. I mean, I hate the word reform because reform, it doesn't mean change. It just means the same system, just a little differently. But
it so often gets used for like, we're going to fuck this up hard.
Yeah. Or we're not going to change a damn thing, but we're going to put the curtain over a little bit. Like, we're just going
to tell you that we've changed it. And well, we're hoping you believe it.
Yeah, it's like we closed a door. Like, it's a door
clearly that room no longer exists.
Yeah. It's a door you wanted to stay open, but we closed it, so now it's reform. So so I hate the word reform, and but there's a lot of good things in this bill. It's a very interesting thing to read about because it's like a lot of people still think of Massachusetts as a very progressive state, and like a lot of people don't think of Massachusetts when it comes to criminal justice or
Yeah, you just kind of assume, it's like super liberal. Clearly, they've already dealt with all this.
Yeah,
and it turns out we haven't done any of it.
Yeah, no, I don't.
We just kind of assume, like everyone
we
here
get
just
very
apparently,
complacent in our progressiveness.
Exactly. We were so focused.
I don't think we've had a
time.
major criminal justice or crime bill like in a few decades.
The last time I recall criminal justice or anything related to that being a big issue in Massachusetts was probably the Willie Horton ads in the 80s.
Oh God, don't. Now you're just bringing up some Republican
I know, it was bullshit and it was on a national scale, but literally that's the last time I can think of a major criminal justice related thing that came up in like the public consciousness involving Massachusetts.
Massachusetts used to never disenfranchise any voter, so including prisoners. And that was until, I believe, 95 or 97, where an inmate at MCI Concord decided to run for, like, I think, like, city commissioner or something. And then all of Massachusetts was like, oh, maybe we shouldn't let them vote. And so then they took it away. But now Massachusetts, we only disenfranchise incarcerated. So the second you're released, it doesn't matter if you're on probation. The second you're released, you get it automatically restored.
Which is a start.
Yeah. No, only 2 states actually surprisingly don't disenfranchise incarcerated. Maine and Vermont.
And honestly, if you're incarcerated, I don't know how much you care about what the city council is where you're currently residing.
But balls to the guy who decided to run. What else are you doing inside?
We had Eugene Debs run back in the teens and 20s from prison while he was in prison for talking shit about the U.S. entering World War I and World War I in general.
I gotta look up this Eugene Debs now.
Eugene Debs was awesome.
But yeah.
Okay, so Kayla, what we're gonna do is get the name of this bill that you've been talking about.
Yeah, I'll link it on the site tomorrow.
Yeah, so that our listeners can take a look at that. If you think it's something that should pass, please call your state senator if you're in Massachusetts.
Your state reps. Anyone who works in the state.
If you're outside of Massachusetts, just call. They get lonely here. Just give them a call anyway.
Or call your state representative and tell them to pass this same bill.
If there's anything
your
in the
state
bill,
can probably use it too.
There are also a bunch of different organizations that work to support families who have family members who are currently incarcerated. There are some groups that specifically talk about the issue of solitary confinement, which is again torture.
And the sheriff that our Joe Arpaio is named Thomas Hodgson, Bristol County Sheriff. We'll have to do a special episode.
We'll cover more on this.
Yeah, because
he's a special piece of crap. But we'll make sure we give you guys some links that you can look at for ways that you can help people who are, currently fighting this fight, and ways you can bully your local representatives to do something good.
Or just persuade strongly.
Okay, I have this argument a lot online. Like, apparently I'm the only person who desperately needs all my civic engagement to be somehow subversive. So I'm like, let's skew the results of this poll. Like, no, you're just voting. You're allowed to. I don't care. We're skewing the results. I feel like
some people get upset when you say bully. We're like, we don't have to bully everybody. I'm like, well,
yeah, we kind of do.
Yeah, we do.
We kind of super do.
It's kind of how our politics work.
Yeah. Wait, who got elected president again? Because I feel like that's kind of telling.
Yeah.
About whether bullying is apparently necessary in American politics.
A bully was literally in the president's office. We can bully some people.
All right, guys. So we're about an hour in right now. We can talk about some stuff in New Mexico. We can talk about some stuff in Iraq. Iraq sounds super depressing, but it is important.
Let's talk about New Mexico.
Let's cover what happened in New Mexico at least, because that is actually something that's important, and I think people need to hear. Well, people probably should hear about the thing in Iraq, but
people can interact more with New Mexico than they can with Iraq right now.
A bit more relatable and offers perhaps a route towards. It's easier to envision how you would act to address the topic, which is kind of funny because in the case of New Mexico, it already happened. New Mexico's public education department proposed new science for New Mexico public schools.
Spoiler alert, they're not great.
So it turns out that 26 states, the American Association for the Advancement of Science, the National Science Teachers Association, and the National Research Council all got together and created what were called the Next Generation Science Standards a few years ago. And the idea was to have a set of standards that could be taught or that could be used to create the curriculum for science classes in schools to ensure that students were prepared for, the 21st century and how the world works.
Like science.
Right. Basic concept, you would think. Well, New Mexico's governor, Susana Martinez, vetoed a bill in April that would have adopted those standards outright, saying that the law was too strict and the state was working on its own standards. By the way. Yes, of course, it was a Republican governor. Now, the actual proposed standards that they came up with were basically lifted from the Next Generation Science Standards, but with some things crossed out and changed. And the things that were crossed out and changed were things like references to the age of the Earth, or the fact that the Earth has been heating up, or the fact that life on Earth has evolved over time.
And the fact that we have smartphones, we have computers in our pockets now.
They didn't actually specify that one being removed, but yeah.
But I mean, like, that's kind of part of it.
No, they were trying to remove any sort of politically controversial scientific references, and boy, was this just a shit fest.
By removing controversial, they just created a controversy.
Also, what they meant was, don't talk about those scientific subjects that our political party dislikes.
Yep.
That's how you avoid the controversy, is just don't talk about things that my side dislikes.
Get those words out of the books.
Also, they included a standard for middle schoolers to, quote, describe the benefits associated with technologies related to the local industries and energy production, end quote.
What?
Which, if that wasn't written by the fossil fuels industry, like,
That
I
sounds
would
like-
give money
I'm sorry,
to
that
someone
sounds
on
like-
We
a
need to give you a hat so you can threaten to eat it.
Yeah,
basically.
exactly.
No, but that also sounds like some internment brainwashing bullshit.
Yes, it does.
Like,
what
here-
a coincidence.
It's like almost like, here, kids, I'm going to teach you how to make a license plate. Don't worry, it's for your civic engagement.
You'll need this later. I mean,
I need 20 of these. Don't worry, your mom will be proud.
Hey guys, you want to go visit the cotton farm for the field trip?
and
like-
see what it's like to work on a real cotton farm.
Like, yeah,
They came up with these awful standards, and then they gave the public barely a month to comment on them before holding a public hearing, which happened 3 days ago now, and had over 200 people attend, all of whom apparently were strongly in opposition to these new standards, including members of the Environmental Education Association of New Mexico and the New Mexico Science Teachers Association. And over 70 people actually spoke at the hearing, with, as far as I've been able to find out, not a single person speaking in favor of the proposed standards. In fact, requests for comment about like who you actually consulted with to write these standards didn't get a response from the public education department. They just do not want to talk about how they came up with this shit.
New Mexico, wasn't that the same state that also like took out any like Mexican history like in their like?
May have been Arizona.
I'm not 100% sure on that one.
It might
I
have been
remember
both.
hearing something about that.
But yeah,
I
there
don't
was like
remember
one of the. I think it might have been both states, but they definitely like removed any like Mexican history from their school books. So it's like, great job, guys, really teaching the kids.
Well, they have this problem where that part of the United States was at one point Mexico.
Yeah, and like a majority of their like residents are of descent.
Also, the way the U.S. acquired it from Mexico, well, we like not to talk about that.
Little sketchy. Which
Yeah.
is funny because Texas, like, you can, sit there in a Texas classroom and say, those motherfuckers, they came and they took our country.
Yep, totally.
And
but
it's
okay.
totally fine. But
No
if
one
you're
has
in
a problem.
Arizona and you're like, we used to be Mexico and they stole us, like, no,
But
nobody's
also,
okay
like,
with that.
Texas requires an in-depth like learning of Texas. Like I took one semester there, and it was a mandated class. Like I had to take a Texas history class, and luckily my a professor was from the north originally, so he actually taught us the actual like war and like what happened. But like no, like I was like it was like ingrained. Like you have to learn about everything Texas. But
yeah, anyway, so not only did every single person attending the meeting speak out against these awful new standards, but there was all kinds of other opposition. There were protests by religious groups led by a Catholic priest. There were all kinds of things up to it, including a full-page ad in the Santa Fe local newspaper, The New Mexican, taken out by 61 scientists and engineers from Los Alamos National Laboratory, saying, "What the fuck, guys? Don't allow this shit."
I
wanna see
wish
it.
that was a verbatim
it's not
quote.
a direct quote.
I want to
wish.
see a photo of this.
It should have been a quote. If you guys got just to let the Los Alamos scientists and engineers know, if you need someone to write some quality copy like that for your next message, I am available.
I am also available.
Mac, he's
Hit
a
us up.
slogan guy.
But anyway, this is what happens when you engage at the local and state level. It's
what-
a
but-
huge pain in the neck.
we should
but-
probably specify that the way that the outcome happened is that, well, the day after that hearing, the new public education secretary announced that all of the controversial revisions were being undone, and that they would in fact include all the references to climate change, evolution, and the age
So
of the Earth.
democracy won.
Yes,
Exactly.
democracy won for once.
Yay!
Exactly.
Hooray.
Yay!
Now I can trust that like whoever like those kids and taking those classes can actually read climate change, the two words, in a book, hopefully.
Now their teacher might still tell them that the book is lying to them.
Oh, absolutely.
And a bunch of them will hear that from their teachers.
Yeah.
But
Right. But like this is, the hard, boring work that actually gets stuff done. All these people, took time out of their day. Like the 16th was that a Monday?
Yeah.
To show up to this public comment period, to this public hearing after that public comment period, and just yell at their legislators. And it's a huge pain in the neck. Part of the reason you guys have all Gregg today is because I brought all the germs into the household because I've been out hanging out with the local politicians and going on doing the knocking on
you
doors
have
and all that
kids,
stuff.
and we all know that kids are just germ bags.
Actually, no. See, this is still related to that because I have been watching Nicole's kids, and they are adorable, but also germ bags.
Yeah, well,
Because one of them's a 3-year-old, and they
they
can't
touch
help it.
everything.
They can't help it.
They just are germs.
So
Also, though, it's important to look at the fact that New Mexico has a Republican governor. The public education secretary was appointed by that governor just a few months ago, and this whole shitfest was basically their idea. And yet, when people came out and organized in even just this short period, they were able to get them to back off. We couldn't do that on a national level if we tried that with an issue like this, any of those issues. There's no way that if there was a national push to remove mentions of climate change from education standards, we couldn't just organize something on a national level and get the Republicans to back off.
We did. We tried. There was the climate march, the scientist march.
And look how much good that did.
And they still removed all the shit from the EPA.
So, we can't, a lot of these are fights that it's not feasible to win at the moment on the national level. But even when that's the case, we can often win them on the local level, even in states where the Republicans are in charge.
Yeah, because the local level is where it's at, and the Republicans have been very smart with this all along because they built small, and now they worked their way up. But this is just proving that again, democracy still works. I know our system is very dysfunctioning and very malfunctioning at the moment.
The word democracy shouldn't really be applied to it in any meaningful sense.
Yeah, not on the national level, but on the state level, the local level, and we can work our way back. We can re-legislate our rights, but we cannot re-legislate the earth if we don't teach about the earth.
And we can't solve problems if we're sitting there trying to pretend they don't exist, or have our legislature ensuring that no one knows they exist.
Yeah.
And it's great that we have these big national rallies. It's great for morale. It's great for showing strength.
It can get some attention to the cause so that people hear about it.
Absolutely. But in the end, the work is what these folks in New Mexico did.
Yeah.
It is showing up when you don't want to.
Even if it's a national issue and needs to be addressed ultimately on the national level, fight for it locally. Do what you can there and just try and shape the local environment, and then spread from there to influence the larger area.
I was listening to Jure McKessa's podcast this morning, and he said something that was really I don't know. It was one of those things where I was kind of struck a nerve, one of those strikes a chord, and you're like, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Where he said he's very hopeful, but hopeful also means work.
Yes.
It's you can believe, you can have hope and believe, but if you really want to be hopeful, that means you got to put in the work to be hopeful, because hope by itself isn't won't get you far, but hope,
that's just wishful thinking, not actually hope.
That's exactly what he said. He was that's just believing, but hope is meaning that you are working for the hope. So I thought that was a very poignant point, and I was just
very applicable here. I think.
Exactly. So it's we still have hope, but that we still got to do the work.
All right. So I think it is time for me to head out and put my poor sick husband in bed.
I think that's a good place to end off on.
I think this is a good place to wrap
Honestly, thank you all for listening this week.
Check out the credits after all this. Check us out on Facebook and all that.
I think we have a Patreon, maybe?
Yeah. You'll hear, if you keep listening for a little while longer, you'll hear our magical disembodied voice talk a little bit about that.
Follow me on Twitter at Avery Kayla.
Always follow at Avery Kayla. You will never regret it. Never, ever.
And that's episode 30.
Have a good night.
Thank you for listening. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter at GreggHoush Show and on Instagram at GreggHoush. If you like what you've heard and want to be a part of it, check out patreon.com/GreggHoush Show. In exchange for funding our programming, you gain access to exclusive content such as uncut editions of our podcast. We have new episodes every Thursday night. We hope you listen in. The GreggHoush Show was created by GreggHoush, executive produced by co-host Eric Gowrays, and co-hosted by Kayla Avery. Other contributors include producer and writer Anna Jeffrey, co-host producer David McGuffin, and writer-engineer Robert Tortora. Theme music for this show was produced and recorded by Geneva de Colbert. Our interns include co-host Casey McLaughlin, writer-engineer Alec Greeny, writer Maddie Locicero, and associate producer, writer, and announcer William Kennedy. You're listening to New Revolutionary Radio, your call to action.